attending
Recording in progress.
the public hearing of the Committee on Local Government, joint with the Committees of National Defense and Security, Peace, Unification and Reconciliation, and Finance. This committee hearing is now called to order. We just wait for the other senators to come. First, at this juncture, the chair recognizes Attorney J. Carubin Fernandez, our committee secretary, to formally acknowledge the resource persons present today.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Chair. We would like to acknowledge our distinguished guest for today. From the Department of Budget and Management, we have Attorney Trisha M. Baraan. From the Commission on Elections, we have Attorney Teopisto L. Nas Jr., Attorney Rafael B. Oliano, and Director Ray F. Sumalipaw. From the Civil Service Commission, we have Attorney Christian Don Gallardo Molina. From the DOJ, we have Ms. Normina R. Hajula Tadifa. From the Land Registration Authority, we have Attorney Sal Valente Tadeus B. Elizalde and Engineer Ante V. Gamiao. From the Office of the Presidential Advisor on the Peace and Reconciliation and Unity, we have Presidential Assistant Cesar B. Llano, Executive Director Cesar D. De Mesa, and Director Jordan S. Bayam. From the Commission on Human Rights, we have Attorney Erwin M. Kaliba. From the Department of National Defense, we have ASEC Henry A. Robinson Jr. From the Armed Forces of the Philippines, we have Captain Norsal D. Dimaporo. From the Philippine National Police, we have Police Brigadier General Percival Augustus P. Placer. We also have online the chairperson of the Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Commission, Mrs. Mo Bleeker. From the Land Management Bureau, we have Attorney Carlon Pambid. From the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao Parliament, we have Deputy Speaker Omar Sema. We also have Parliament Member Jose Ribani Lorena. We also have Attorney Raisa H. Chajuri. Thank you so much for coming today. That's all for now, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Comsec. Today we'll be hearing Senate Bill numbers 2043 and 2392, authored by Senator Hontiveros and Senator Francis Tolentino, respectively. These are the proposed bills on the Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Act for Bangsamoro. At this juncture, the chair would like to give his opening statement. Members of this committee, ladies and gentlemen, isang mapagpalang umaga sa ating lahat. This hearing of the Committee on Local Government has been called to order. Today, the Senate reaffirms its commitment to forging a lasting peace in the Bangsamoro region. We will build upon the progress made when the Bangsamoro Organic Law was enacted. For the record, I strongly supported that measure and worked towards its passage during the 17th Congress. These bills will continue that mission. They will secure the peace by addressing the numerous historic injustices wreaked upon the Bangsamoro region. It will address long-standing grievances and begin the process of healing. For as one saying goes, a new house cannot be built from bricks from the past. Similarly, a prosperous Bangsamoro must be built on a sturdy foundation of justice and reconciliation. It must ensure that its people will never feel alienated ever again, nor compelled to seek justice through the barrel of a gun. This measure seeks to establish a 7-member commission which will implement a transitional justice and reconciliation program for the Bangsamoro. It will conduct information campaigns, recommend measures to dismantle impunity, and propose solutions for those affected by armed conflicts and land disputes. To conclude, to my dear colleagues who will be joining us later, much has been done to bring peace to Bangsamoro people. We have lived to see the rifles pounded into plowshares. The hands which were once armed are now tilling the land and building the future. We must now work to nurture this peace and with justice. Today, we will ensure that justice rolls like the Mindanao River and healing flows like many of its streams. Maraming salamat po. So now we move to the hearing proper. and we shall hear the different positions of the different stakeholders. But just the chair, just I would like to remind everybody, I'm sure that you have submitted your position papers. Wag na po natin basahin ang buong laman ng position papers, yung pong gist lamang, no? Para po because there's still a lot of people, resource person that we have to hear. Anyway, the committee is in receipt of your position paper. So yun na lang pong gist ang ating pong in summary, if possible, yan lang po ang ating pong banggitin sa araw na ito. Okay, so now we move on. First will be the position statement of Honorable Ahod Balawang Ibrahim, the interim chief minister of the Bangsamoro government, represented by Deputy Speaker Oma Sema and Deputy Speaker Lanag Aling. Sirs, you have the floor.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Mr. Chair, we have a common statement with this particular issue, and we agreed to designate Attorney Raisa Jajuri, MP of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, to read the statement of the BARM and the statement of the Chief Minister Ahod Balawag. May we recognize the statement?
Yes, Member Parliament Raisa Jahuyuri, you're now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I will be reading, Mr. Chair, is the position paper of the Peace Implementing Panel of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, which now leads the Bangsamoro Transition Authority. This is just 2 pages, Mr. Chair. The Moro Islamic Liberation Front, which signed the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro with the government of the Philippines, is in full support of any action, policy, or legislation that will lead to the complete implementation of the Peace Pact. Thus, we welcome the filing and hope for the swift passage of the law that will create a national body for transitional justice and reconciliation for the Bangsamoro. Since the signing of the CAB in 2014 and even after the passage of Republic Act 11054 that paved the way for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region's creation in 2019, our people have yearned for the rightful redress of the legitimate grievances, historical injustices, marginalization through land dispossession, and human rights violations that marked our past. The enactment of this legislation will be the first real step towards the fulfillment of this aspect of the CAB, the aspect which seeks to heal the so-called wounds of conflict. We are of firm belief that there can be no true healing and moving forward by a people or peoples that suffered through generations of oppression if not predicated on the attainment of justice in its varied forms. However, Mr. Chair, beyond the passage of just any legislation, the Bangsamoro government and the MILF believe that for it to serve its purpose and fulfill its reason for being, as identified in the peace agreement, the following key elements must define the enactment. 1, the creation of a single body where all efforts pertaining to transitional justice and reconciliation are centralized. This body should be national in scope so that communities outside the BARM, which comprise the bulk of those affected by the historical injustices compared to those living inside the region, can be covered by its jurisdiction. This also enables its exercise of authorities over national government agencies and therefore allows it to function using the whole of government approach in its fulfillment of the rights to truth, to justice, and to reparation of the victims, and better guarantees the non-recurrence of violations. Therefore, the Bangsamoro government, the MILF, endorsed the creation of the National Commission provided in the Senate bills. Number 2, the adoption of the recommendations of the Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Commission, TJRC, from the framework used up to the implementation of the specific projects and activities. The exhaustive discussion by the TJRC, the body created by the negotiating parties, to undertake a specific study on this matter is replete with proposed next steps which can be the starting point for the National Commission. Number 3, the direct and robust involvement and participation of the BARM offices in initiatives for transitional justice, such as the Bangsamoro Human Rights Commission for Human Rights Abuses, the Ministry of Basic Higher and Technical Education, and the Bangsamoro Commission for the Preservation of Cultural Heritage for the development of school curricula on the Bangsamoro history, and the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs for gathering the perspectives of the non-Moro and other minority indigenous communities, among many other offices, over the various facets of transitional justice. The perspective of the Bangsamoro, which may very well be articulated by these BARM offices, can add value to the National Commission from the conceptualization of initiatives to actual implementation and eventual monitoring. And lastly, Mr. Chair, the participation of the Bangsamoro government and or the MILF in the identification of the members of the National Commission. As the sub-national government entity primarily affected by transitional justice programs and as a party to the CAB respectively, their input on who and what qualities in an individual can do justice to the delivery of the arduous task of the National Commission is crucial. When all these basic features are found in the law, Mr. Chair, the Bangsamoro government and the MILF believe that it will increase the likelihood of success of the transitional justice program for the Bangsamoro. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for that common, at least common position na po, no? Yung statement nila Interim Chief Minister Ibrahim, also Member Parliament, Bangsamoro Parliament Speaker, Pangalian Balindong, and Mohager Iqbal. So thank you also for Deputy Speaker Ali and Deputy Speaker Oma Sema, may Kuya Jose Lorena, and Member Parliament Raisa Jajuri for coming to this hearing all the way from BAR. Maraming salamat po sa pagpunta. Now we shall hear online. Unahin na po natin yung online position statement of Ms. Mo Blicker, former Chair of the Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Commission.
Good morning.
Ma'am, you're online. You have the floor po. You have the floor.
Thank you.
Ms.
Thank you.
Mo Blicker.
Thank you. Just 1 second. I need to open my text. Thank you. Mr. Chair, honorable senators, ladies and gentlemen, I first wish to thank you for the invitation to participate in this Senate hearing about such important bills aiming to the creation of a National Transition and Reconciliation Commission for the Bangsamoro. The TGRC was created as part of the normalization process to be put into place following the signing of the Comprehensive Agreement on the Bangsamoro, CAB. I was invited to chair this commission by both peace panels with the support of Switzerland. 18 months after its public launch in October 2014, the Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Commission presented its final report in Cotabato and in Manila in March 2016. The findings and recommendations were endorsed by both parties to the peace agreement. I wish to underline that both the GPH and MILF peace panels have totally respected the TJRC autonomy, for which I express my gratitude and deepest respect to both of them. The TGRC, as you know, was mandated to propose appropriate mechanism to address legitimate grievances of the Bangsamoro people, to correct historical injustices, to address human rights violations, including marginalization through land depossession, and to make recommendations with a view to promote healing and reconciliation of the different communities that have been affected by the conflict. To implement its mandate, the TJRC designed its own dealing with the past approach based on the acknowledged rights of the affected community and the duties of states in the access to and promotion of the truth, justice, reparation, and guarantees of non-recurrence. More than 100 people Women and men from the Bangsamoro region and at national level actively engage with the TGRC as facilitators, as experts, key informants in this consultation process. Community, religious leaders, academics, experts, practitioners in the field of conflict transformation and human rights, public servants, representatives of the security and the business sectors, Muslim, Christians, and indigenous peoples. The TGRC opted for listening. We felt indeed that listening was the best way to truly understand what legitimate grievances of the Bangsamoro people, historical injustice, human rights violation, and marginalization through land dispossession represent in terms of facts on the ground and in terms of experience, perception, and identity. With the support of more than 25 trained facilitators, the TGRC conducted listening sessions in some 211 Moro, indigenous, and settler communities in Mindanao and the Zulu archipelago, involving more than 3,000 community members and local officials. All these communities have been affected by the conflict during several generations in a way or another. We also established separate working groups composed of national experts from diverse professional backgrounds, historians, anthropologists, archivists, sociologists, political scientists, and experts in legal affairs. These people worked with us on the 4 topics of our mandate and drew upon the knowledge already existing in hundreds of reports, field studies, history books, documentaries. They produced excellent reports and came out with sound recommendations. The TGRC also realized that dealing with the past assessment, meaning that we reviewed what had been done until now in the Philippines in the field of transitional justice, which initiatives had been undertaken in the past, what had been their result, and could be built on these experiences. As a final step, we realized also key policy interviews, namely we met with dozens of civil servants, public officials, policymakers, and asked them for their opinion about the recommendations compiled during this whole process. Were they realistic in the sense of being feasible, manageable, and achievable? I can tell you today that all people we met were convinced us that instead of having a Bangsamoro problem, there was, and I'm sure there still is, a Bangsamoro opportunity. Indeed, our interlocutors convinced us that the people of the Bangsamoro and the Philippines were in a position to deal seriously with the legacy of the troubled past and to constructively address past injustices and abuse. In this way, the main recommendation for the creation of a National Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Commission was seen as a unique opportunity for the sustainable peaceful future of both the Bangsamoro and the Philippines. To conclude with this general part, let me recall that you can find this main report and all the other reports about the listening process and on land dispossession on the website of the tgrc.ph, including the documentary realized based upon the main TGRC report. Allow me now to enter quickly in the substance. What were the findings of the TGRC report? First, that legitimate grievances of the Bangsamoro people were rooted in historical experience and have become part of the collective identity of the Bangsamoro. Legitimate grievances designate for them the harms suffered by the Bangsamoro and indigenous people during decades, which have never been officially acknowledged nor addressed seriously, whether they are political, economic, social, cultural in nature. Second, that historical injustice refers to wrongdoings committed or sanctioned by governments, Spanish, American, and Japanese colonial governments and the Philippine governments that hurt or harmed people repeatedly and systematically over time and were not properly addressed. It furthermore refers to their perception of having been erased, excluded from public spaces, the national narrative and history, as well as having been labeled negatively, that affected the Moro's sense of self and culture, behavior, and relationship with others. People lamented the fact that they have been treated as outcasts, second-class citizens, and the wild and savage other, that their narrative have been excluded from the national history, their names removed from public spaces, and that they felt that they were constantly portrayed negatively or treated with a profound disrespect for their dignity. This has deeply affected their sense of self-worth, trust, and their behavior towards others. Thirdly, human rights violation. In the course of the research of the TGRC study group and the listening process, the violation of both political and civil rights, as well as economic, social, and cultural rights of the Moro and indigenous people, figured prominently throughout all discussions on legitimate grievances, historical injustice, and marginalization through land dispossession. People referred to extrajudicial killings and for disappearance, torture, arbitrary arrest, rape, mistaken identities that took place decades ago and continue to the present time. In the context of armed conflict, excuse me, I'm opening my camera. In the context of armed conflict, mass atrocity crimes occurred before and during the period of martial law. We became aware that the cumulative effect of historical injustices and subsequent continuing human rights violations shall not be underestimated. We were informed that many actors have been involved in the commission of these violations: state actors, state-affiliated armed groups, non-state armed actors, and multiple forms of violence have been committed. Although no party to the Bangsamoro conflict is innocent of accusations of human rights abuse and of international humanitarian law violations, we found enough reasons to believe that state security forces or paramilitary forces under their control are responsible for the most heinous crimes and atrocity in the past. An additional factor in this context was that violence has not been only vertical, top-down, but also increasingly of horizontal nature. Our report explains these aspects in detail. As the conflict does not end, and given its multifold nature, horizontal violence multiplied. Pocket wars tended to erupt between different communities. Rideau, for example, was, and possibly is, still regarded as one of the greatest sources of violence, displacement, and insecurity by Moro communities in the conflict areas of Mindanao. The violence against women ranked second after massacres in terms of the frequency of their being mentioned during the TGRC listening process. The widespread commission of rape and other acts of violence by government armed forces and auxiliaries against Moro and indigenous women was meant to demoralize the enemy and to destroy the moral fabric of the Moro society, where women are seen as bearers of honor and culture. Internal enforced displacement studies showed that some 41% of the Moro adult population in Maguindanao and Lao del Norte had experienced forced displacement at some time during the last decade. Of those, nearly 30% of the affected communities reported having been displaced multiple times and for an average length of 6 months to a year or more. Decades of conflict-related displacement in the Bangsamoro has had a profoundly negative impact on the welfare and the development of the affected population and of the region as a whole. In fact, the relationship between displacement, poverty, and migration is mutually reinforcing. Fourthly, marginalization through land dispossession. The dispossession of the Moro and indigenous people from their ancestral territories and their ensuing political, social, economic, and cultural marginalization are largely acknowledged as a historical fact. Studies establish that the land dispossession itself has been systematic and embedded in laws and institutions. It is crucial to understand that from the perspective of the Bangsamoro and indigenous peoples, land dispossession and the resulting marginalization of their community has been seen as a form of historical injustice of such a gravity that, in their eyes, it justified, at the time, secession from the Philippines. We were told that the resettlement programs involving migrants from Luzon and the Visayas had taken on such dimension as to be qualified as ethnic flooding, by which the native population had been reduced to a minority. Moreover, land dispossession not only resulted in political and economic marginalization, but also in the loss of social and cultural identity, the land being not only the source of life in community, but also the basis for Moro and indigenous peoples' collective identity. This is what the TGRC heard, that it was told through the listening process, and this was then corroborated by the different study groups, the dealing with the past assessment, and key policy interviews. Based on all these elements, the TGRC developed its own understanding of this phenomenon, namely that the complex of grievances and injustices outlined in the TGRC mandate are the consequence of three mutually reinforcing phenomena: violence, impunity, and neglect. What we meant by this can be briefly described as follows: systemic violence by the state, expressed in terms of political, socio-economic, and cultural exclusion, and in the disproportionate use of direct violence. A pervasive culture of impunity that undermines the practice of the rule of law. Deep neglect by the state combined with a lack of vision for the common good. Allow me to conclude now with the TGRC recommendations. First of all, it is important to acknowledge that a number of initiatives that belong to the universe of transitional justice have already been undertaken in the Philippines to address the legacy of the past. There are several good examples, among them the important endeavor by the Human Rights Victim Claims Board in the area of martial law, victim compensation, and the ongoing efforts of the Commission on Human Rights and others to honor their memory in a museum, the mainstreaming of the human rights and international humanitarian law in the armed forces and national police, the creation of the Human Rights Office and the institutionalization of its human rights manual in the AFP, as well as the identification and protection of relevant archives related to human rights violation during the martial law period. But while each of these initiatives have been so important in and by themselves, these initiatives have not had a significant impact on the situation on the Bangsamoro for several reasons. They did not adequately address the root causes. They promoted ad hoc, isolated measures instead of a holistic strategy. They were not able to draw a line before and after the periods of wrongdoings and injustice. They did not contribute to the prevention of revisionist discourse and denial about injustices committed in the past. This shortcoming have indeed informed the TGRC recommendations, which are formulated with the intention to open a constructive path for the Bangsamoro and Filipino context that can both address root causes and their consequences. Furthermore, the TGRC was also aware that it did not need to reinvent the wheel. Indeed, more than 50 countries in the world have gone through or are actually undergoing this kind of transitional justice processes. Mistakes have been made along the way, lessons have been learned, and good practices have emerged. We can build on them. Today, we are in a position to acknowledge the prerequisites for such processes to have serious impact. For example, the guarantees of total independence and autonomy for any TJ bodies, the solidity and consistency of the architecture and mandate of such commission, and the widely recognized impartiality of the members of the commissioners of such commission. The TGRC developed two sets of recommendations, and the most strategic one was to create an independent national transitional justice and reconciliation commission led by national personality of the highest moral standing and above the line of conflict. This independent body with a pertinent legal powers shall create 4 subcommissions to listen to the victim of the conflict, investigate serious violations of international human rights and international humanitarian law, and inquire into specific events of the war, contribute to the resolution of outstanding land dispute in conflict-affected areas in the Bangsamoro, and address the legacy of land dispossession with concrete measures to provide redress. Next, engage in the struggle against impunity by promoting accountability and strengthening the rule of law in relation to past and present wrongdoings, including crimes identified under the Rome Statute and under international conventions to which the Philippines is a signatory. Next slide. Promote healing and reconciliation among the different communities affected by the conflict. Additionally, the TGRC shared more than 90 recommendations that emerged from the consultation process. Some of them have been implemented or are foreseen to be implemented by existing institutions at Philippine level or in the Bangsamoro as part of an ongoing agenda of a state that takes its responsibility. Yet, while we can only congratulate all the civil servants who have been working on the 90 recommendation, the creation of an independent body such as these two bills are foreseeing is an absolute necessity to address the root causes of a systematic forms of violence, impunity, and neglect that were prevailing, and moreover, to finalize the implementation of the peace agreement. Regarding the bills, and to conclude, the independence and autonomy of such a transitional justice body is crucial. You do have domestic examples on which you can build, such as the Human Rights Commissions, for example. The other element is the consistency of the mandate and its architecture. And regarding both points, and upon your invitation, I have made some observations with a view to draw your attention to the importance of the following: that the Commission shall be mandated to implement a strategy and a program, that the 4 subcommissions shall be placed under the Commission's authority, and furthermore, as far as I can judge, you have attributed the needed powers to this Commission, notably in terms of subpoena and authority. Equally, a duration of 6 years with a possible extension of 3 years is a very good solution. I've handed over my observations to the Senate as requested, and I hope that they will be useful for your further debates. And furthermore, and on a more personal note, I wish to congratulate the authorities of the Philippines and of the Bangsamoro for their sincere and continuous efforts to finalize the implementation of the peace agreement. Allow me to encourage you to continue with determination. You are making history, and it will contribute to a sustainable and constructive future. And now, the creation of the National Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Commission is an important, if not crucial, milestone thereof. I'm convinced that such commission will become a strategic step for all the Philippine and Bangsamoro peoples to acknowledge the painful past and decide with sense of responsibility to promote a new way of living together as citizens, a new societal contract, to create sincere conditions for reconciliation and a new culture of peaceful coexistence based on equality of rights, duties, and the rule of law. All this, honorable senators, will be crucial to prevent the recurrence of the conflict. Indeed, this is prevention in action, and this is the future orientation of transitional justice, a future for sustainable peace. The creation of the National Commission is indeed a historical opportunity of the Bangsamoro, a historical opportunity for the Philippines. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Moblicker, for that very comprehensive position of TJRC. I know it's 3 a.m. there, so we very much appreciate your input to this committee. Thank you, ma'am. So before we continue, the chair would like to acknowledge the presence of our COMELEC chair, Attorney George Garcia, COMELEC commissioners, Commissioner Ray Bulay, Commissioner Ernesto Maceda Jr. So thank you, sirs, for coming. Akala ko po, yung ano lang, okay na sana eh. But we have the presence of the chair and 2 commissioners. Siguro unahin na lang po namin kayo mamaya doon sa mga questions, no? And so that we would not want to take your time. Dahil importante, baka we know how busy COMELEC is. Hopefully not preparing for PI. Hopefully for the election of 2025. Last, before we continue, yung pong last position of, before then we will ask the different stakeholders and agencies already. Position statement of the ND Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr., former Secretary, Office of the Presidential Advisor on Peace, Reconciliation, and Unity, or OPAPRU. So he will be represented by Presidential Assistant Cesar Llano. Sir, you have the floor, then we will already ask the questions of the stakeholders.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Honorable Chairman of the Senate Committee on Local Government, Senate officials, Chairman Garcia, and the Commissioners of COMELEC, other guests, especially our partners from BARM, good morning. We would like to convey the apologies from Secretary Galvez for not making it today as expressed in his letter to the committee. The Office of the Presidential Advisor on Peace, Reconciliation, and Unity, or OPAPRU, appreciates the Senate bills authored by Senator Tolentino and Senator Hontiveros. Both bills are proposing for the creation of the National Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Commission for the Bangsamoro, or the NTJRCB, and the establishment of a Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Program, or TJRP, for the Bangsamoro. These policy measures support the pronouncement of the President in fulfilling the commitments to the Comprehensive Agreement on the Bangsamoro, or the CAB, with the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, or MILF, wherein transitional justice and reconciliation is one of the key aspects and considered the heart and soul of the normalization. The UPAPRO fully supports the NTJRCB creation. It recognizes the aspirations of the Bangsamoro for the creation of a national TJR body to implement measures that are anchored on the dealing with the past framework to promote healing, reconciliation, and unity at the local, regional, and national levels. The UPAPRO fully supports the NTJRCB creation with initial recommendations for consideration. Number 1, expansion of ex officio members comprised of concerned national government agencies like DOJ, DILG, DND, CHR, and UPAPRO, together with credible domestic and accredited civil society organizations, or CSOs, and established private institutions from the academic, religious, legal, and media sectors. The inclusion of concerned national government agencies as ex officio members of the proposed commission shall provide a deeper sense of context and expertise to address legitimate issues, which shall strengthen the scope of effective implementation of the commission's mandate and exercise of its functions. Moreover, the inclusion of the concerned national government agencies shall promote accountability to the officers and offices in order to foster immediate and responsive action in the delivery of its office's responsibility within the present sphere of an established bureaucracy. Second, the formation of a technical working group, or TWG, by the Senate with national agencies and BARM to further study the function and structure of the NTJRCB, as well as clarify on and respond to issues that may arise from the NTJRCB creation. Third, OPAPRO recognizes that the plight of our brothers in the Bangsamoro region dates back since time immemorial. However, for purposes of transitional justice and reconciliation, there is a need to consider challenges in the verification of the legitimacy of reports on violations of human rights and international humanitarian law in the Bangsamoro since 1948. The UPAPRO maintains its commitment to support transitional justice for the Bangsamoro, specifically the creation of a national mechanism and the establishment of a transitional justice and reconciliation program that will address legitimate grievances of the Bangsamoro people, correct historical injustices, and address human rights violations and marginalization through land dispossession, and promote national healing and reconciliation at large. Your Honor, we hope and pray for the passage of this bill into law in order to contribute to the lasting peace, healing, and reconciliation in the Bangsamoro. Thank you.
Thank you, our Presidential Assistant, former General Cesar Llano. Thank you, sir, for being here. The Chair would like to acknowledge the presence of our colleague, members of this committee, Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa. Sir, thank you for coming. You might want to statement. adjusting. Okay, so we move on already. We will already start to ask the questions on the different agencies. And as I mentioned earlier, we'd like to take advantage of the presence of our COMELEC chair and the two commissioners. And we do not want to keep you here. In 2021, RA 11593 was passed, which extended the transition period of MARM from 2022 to 2025, thereby postponing the first regional parliamentary elections in the region. Question po, is the COMELEC ready to hold its the very first parliamentary elections in the region?
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, magandang umaga po, and to all the agencies present, representatives of the different agencies, as well as the MILF implementing peace panel. Your Honor, Mr. Chair, as far as the COMELEC is concerned, we are prepared to conduct the Bangsamoro parliamentary election by 2025. Ang pakiusap lang po sana namin talaga, lalong-lalo na po sa ating Bangsamoro Parliament, ay sana po maipasat na kaagad yung pong redistricting, sapagkat hindi po ganun kadali sa part ng Commission on Elections kung sakasakali po na malilate yung pagpasa po nito, sapagkat redistricting, Mr. Chair, Your Honor, just in case po na maipapasa later, would mean a disaster on the part of the COMELEC, simply because we are going to transfer certain data, especially the list, the voters list, from the original list to a new district. Halimbawa po, dati-rate, based sa ating legislative district, yung isang municipality na to na andito sa distrito na to. Kung bigla po siyang malilipat, yung mga kababayan natin do sa distrito na to, sa bayan na to, doon sa palibagong distrito, medyo magkakaproblema po tayo, Mr. Chair. And that's why, but we received the commitment from the Bangsamoro Parliament that they'll be passing at least, I think, this week, the redistricting on today. Today. So that's a very good news, Mr. Chair. And Your Honor, so as far as the COMELEC is concerned, mabubuo na po yung aming preparation, because we are likewise preparing for the Parliament, for the creation of the 8 municipalities. Yan pong plebisito ngayong April 13, dyan po sa Bangsamoro, yung 63 barangays po. And then we are going to likewise pass today also, the implementing rules and regulation of the election code, which was passed last year by the Bangsamoro Parliament. So we are going to pass likewise the IRR today. Medyo masalimuot po kasi yung mismong implementing rules and regulation, but we will see to it that we will now begin with the accreditation of political parties and the sectors that will be properly represented, Mr. Chair and Your Honor, dito po sa ating Parliament. So lahat po naman ngayon, so far, ay maayos ang preparation namin. We will have 2 ballots sa ating pong parliamentary election by next year. 1 ballot for the national and local election, and the other ballot, Mr. Chair, Your Honor, para naman po doon sa parliamentary election. Siyempre po naandun yung member of the parliament per district as determined, at naandun din po yung mga sa sectoral or political parties and other representation. Thank you po, Mr. Chair, Your Honor.
Thank you, COMELEC Chair. Deputy Speaker, Oma.
Yeah, thank
Please.
you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As mentioned by the Honorable Chair of the Commission on Elections, we are almost done with the legislation of the districting, and we hope to pass it today. We are still in the period of amendment, and we just suspended the proceedings today, and upon return of the members today, they will proceed with the amendment.
Certificate of
Yeah, and it has already been certified by the Chief Minister as urgent. And we hope that we can pass it today, and the latest would be tomorrow, Mr. Chair. But of course, we still have concerns. There are pending petitions against the laws that we have passed, particularly the election code. And Just very recently, the Parliament has passed a resolution supporting the call of the President for charter change, and we believe that charter change can change the course of history as far as the election codes of the Bangsamoro is concerned, as far as the local governance code, and as far as the election code of the Bangsamoro is concerned. These are very material legislations that affects our governance, affects also, that could probably affect the outcome of the first Bangsamoro elections. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. That's good news. At least po, the Parliament already acted, no? Dahil yung pong kailangan po ng COMELEC so that there will be no more delays. So thank you for that. Second, Chairman, what have been the preparations of the COMELEC to ensure the peaceful elections next year? Kasi alam niyo naman tong before that was yun naman challenge sa area yan, sa region, but I hope with the creation of the BARM, mukha naman magiging mas maayos na. So any more challenges?
Mr. Chair, Your Honors, as far as the COMELEC is concerned, ang kauna-unahan po talagang dapat ayusin yung laws. We already passed the election code, perhaps they already passed the local government code, the administrative code, and we are now waiting for the IRR. We're going to pass the IRR. If we are going to conduct the election peacefully, the plebiscite in the 63 barangays, and it will be converted into 8 municipalities, makukumpleto na po, Your Honor, yung territorial jurisdiction ng Bangsamoro. And so, as far as the COMELEC is concerned, yung first phase of the full transformation of the Bangsamoro is already completed, and therefore, yung election po, Mr. Chair, we will closely coordinate as we have done in the barangay and SK election with the Bangsamoro, especially with the commission, the higher education institution in the Bangsamoro, because we would like to closely likewise coordinate with our teachers na gagamitin po namin as electoral board members sa darating na halalan. And most importantly, we are going to request for a critical cooperation and collaboration with the Bangsamoro government because of the new machines that the COMELEC are going to use. We would like to fully disseminate and to educate our people on how to use these new machines. And we can only do that if we can have a very close coordination with the Bangsamoro government. Kasi po, very important that nobody will be left behind as far as the use of new technology is concerned.
Thank you, Chairman George Garcia. So it will be a historic election next year, no? Ito may for 2025 for the Bangsamoro government, no? That will be something to watch for next year.
Mr. Chair, as a final note on this matter, would like to likewise announce to the Bangsamoro government that your commission elections will be going to Camp Darapanan and Camp Abubakar, because we would like to register our people in these areas, because we would like to prove that as we have done during the first day of the conduct of the election, we went to Pag-asa Island, so we would like to go to likewise these places because we wanted to prove that there is peace in these areas, especially in the heartland of the Bangsamoro. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One question lang to Uparo. While waiting for Congress to pass the bills proposing the establishment of National Transitional and Reconciliation Commission of the Bangsamoro, would it be possible for the executive department to issue an executive order to implement and operationalize the report of the TRJC submitted in 2016? Para masimula na dandan habang, kasi baka matagal pa lumabas itong batas ito. Sana kung pwede. Kasi as I have observed, no, as I have noted, no, EO 79 series of 2019 as amended by EO 6 series of 2022 created the inter-cabinet cluster mechanism on normalization, is mandated to lead the implementation of the recommendations provided for in the report of the TRJRC. So, reminder lang, meron na kayong ganito, no? Baka pwedeng buhayin ninyo para mag-start na kayo habang kinakrap pa namin yung batas.
With the permission of the chair, may I ask Executive Director De Mesa to respond to that?
Yes, Executive Director De Mesa, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, the ICCMN sub-cluster on TJR came up with the roadmap recommending PAPs for the TJR. And we submitted them to the MILF counterpart. And just last year, we started validating the roadmaps, the different PAPs proposed by the ICCMN members. And right now, we have completed validation, and we have recommended 115 PAPs for both government and the BARM. So the BARM agencies also contributed to the PAPs, and we are about to present them to the ICCMN members for the government and the BARM ministries for the MILF side. And once we have gathered the comments, we will meet again and present the output to the panel for implementation.
Thank you,
sir.
thank you, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to hear that it's a positive development, no? Kahit na hindi pa pala napasa itong batas na ito, nag-start na kayo. Salamat for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair, may I add?
Yes,
Actually, during the course of validation of these PAPs, we have gathered a total of 29 PAPs already completed by the national government, 51 ongoing, 33 pending, and 2 postponed. Some of other agencies' actions are conflicting with the BARM, so others were postponed. But generally, we have accomplished some of the actions that addresses the different recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
thank you. Before we continue, siguro wala na kaming concern sa COMELEC. Anyway, you will be leaving the executive director, no? Okay lang po. We'd like to excuse already our chairman, George Garcia, our two commissioners, Ray Bulay and Ernest Maceda Jr. Thank you for
Thank you,
coming
Thank you
this
very much,
morning.
Mr. Chair. We're going to submit to your committee immediately after the passage of the IRR so that the committee will have a copy of the implementing rules and regulation of the election code of the Bangsamoro. Thank you very much, Mr.
I'm
Chair.
sure
Your
that
Honor.
this will be a challenge, but this is a historic, as I mentioned, because this will really pave the way to lasting peace. As at least yung BARM now will now have their elected leaders by next year. No? Malaking ano to. Malaking may iba na to. Tsaka, Sen Bato, sabi ko kasi dati pag may election doon, takot lahat eh. No? So talagang sa region na yun. Nung may conflict pa, nung wala pa yung BARM. So sabi nga doon eh, pag may ano daw doon, may historia, kinuwento ko si Sen Bato. Datay daw, dala yung anak, tsaka yung isa bata. Ilan kayong boboto? 3. Hindi pa ako pwede yan. Marunong ka pa sa akin, ako ang tatay. Pero ngayon, hindi na siguro mangyayari dahil we have already the BARM present. Diba? That will be historic next year.
Thank you very much,
Okay,
Mr.
thank
Chair.
you, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Chairman George, Commissioners, thank you, thank you. Siguro we go to Bangsamoro Transition Authority Parliament. No? Sino magsasagot sana? So, siguro, tanin ko muna OPAPRO. Okay na. So, sige. Bangsamoro Transition Authority Parliament. Siguro si Deputy Speaker Omar Sema can answer, or anybody. Under the Bangsamoro Organic Law, the Bangsamoro Parliament is empowered to enact a transitional justice mechanism to address the legitimate grievances of the Bangsamoro people, including the indigenous group. Sa kasalukuyan, nasan po ang Bangsamoro sa aspeto ng transitional justice? Ano po ang ating mga nasimulan at ginagawa upang mapag-usapan at pagtuunan ng pansin ang mga legitimate grievances ng ating mga kapatid doon sa region, sa area? Where are we? Yung status siguro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the Parliament, we also there were measures that were filed that has relationship with transitional justice and reconciliation. I believe that it is a private member bill. It was filed by one of our colleagues, Attorney Liza Alamia. And however, yes, there were two resolutions, I believe, also that were filed, and we passed it already. Yes, and I think there is a stark difference between what is being discussed here right now, Your Honor, and what the Parliament wants as a transitional justice and reconciliation program. Magkaiba ho yung mga sa jurisdiction pa lang ho, iba na ho. But nonetheless, we fully agree, Mr. Chair, that this representation as a representative of the Moro National Liberation Front in the BTA, we fully support the stance of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front as far as transitional justice and reconciliation is concerned, because the implementation of all of the signed peace agreements also hinge on the implementation of the and the full implementation of the comprehensive agreement ng the Bangsamoro. So kung mai-implement ho ang mga provisions ng CAB, we in the MNLF sees it as a full as an implementation also of the peace agreements between the government and the Moro National Liberation Front. Now, going back to the issue at hand, yung sa transitional justice ng BARM, of course, we respect the positions of our colleagues, but I think the approach to transitional justice, we believe, is a collective effort, and we will follow what the Bangsamoro government takes, what position they will take, because we believe that the consistency on the approach of transitional justice is very important, and it would lead to a success on the measure. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Member Parliament, Lorena.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just like to add that the two resolutions mentioned have already been referred to our committee. We have a Bangsamoro Justice Committee. It was already referred, and we are ready to report that back to the Parliament. That's in addition. In addition to what Deputy Speaker Sema mentioned, as far as the two agreements, we are not only implementing the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro, but we are also implementing the 1996 final peace agreement between the government of the Philippines and the Moro National Liberation Front. In the concluding communique in Jeddah, which I presided when I was still Undersecretary of OPAP, there were already agreements that the implementation of the CAB and the implementation of the 1996 final peace agreement is already embodied in the implementation of Republic Act 11054, because provisions of the 1996 final peace agreement was already incorporated into the law, similar to those also being provided for under the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro. So we are actually implementing two agreements in the pursuit of transitional justice. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Member Parliament Jose Lorena. Next, how does the PTA how are you able to document the historical injustice against the Bangsamoro? Na-document ba natin to? Sige, Deputy Speaker Ali.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Mr. Chair, yan po ang dahilan na kami ay nananawagan sa national government na ipasa itong bill na to related sa National Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Commission, dahil base po sa aming pagdokumento, no, karamihan po ng mga injustices committed against the Bangsamoro happened outside the BARM, no? Including the Malisbong massacre in Palimbang, the Manili massacre in Carmen, North Cotabato, not mention the massacre committed in Kauswagan, Lanao del Norte. Sa aming pananaw po ay 90% na karamihan ng mga injustices committed were done outside of the barn, whereas only 10% inside the barn. So hindi po hadlang na may pasa ang isang Bangsamoro Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Commission sa loob ng BARM, pero mas nangangailangan po ang isang commission na national in scope na may pasa dahil yun po karamihan po ng mga nangyaring injustices were committed outside of the BARM, Mr. Chair. Thank you po.
Thank you for that. I'd like to ask Commission on Human Rights and the National Commission on Indigenous People. Does CHR, sa CHR, Attorney Erwin Caliba, does CHR and NCIP, pareho lang naman ang tanong, also keep track the record of the historical abuses suffered by the Bangsamoro people and the IP group?
As to the IP group, Mr. Chair, we have been tracking, particularly on the indigenous peoples, the non-Moro IPs. So far, that's to my knowledge, Mr. Chair.
Any representation from NCIP? Meron ba sa NCIP? Wala. Wala, no? So NCIP, sige po, do you keep track on the historical abuses on sa mga ano? On that area, sa Bangsamoro people and the IP group, lalo yung IP group in the area?
Thank you, Honorable Chair and your honors. With respect to the National Commission on Indigenous People, we are working actually with the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs. NCIP is only assisting and helping the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs with respect to its experiences on the alleged land dispositions. And we are coordinating with the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you for that. Next, siguro for the BTA again, can answer this. Kanina nabanggit nyo, 90% of those atrocities nangyayari outside, no? So 10% lang yun nangyayari sa BARM. How do you measure your accomplishments? So ito yung question pero nasagot nyo na rin in terms of eventually eliminating the injustices in the region. Can we say that these injustices are somehow addressed through the BTA? At least 10% na lang eh. So
We
how do you plan to
guarantee that, sir, in an exact statement right now. However, the BTA have so many programs right now that we can actually provide for our fellow Bangsamoros outside of the core territory. Our main concern right now is we don't have any control with the security. We have no control with law enforcement operations. Usually ho ang violations ho talaga sa against our people come from law enforcement operations. And that's one concern na wala kaming control. The Chief Minister has no control over the police. He only can recommend. He only can make opinions, make positions. He has no command and control over police. But nonetheless, Mr. Chair, as far as we know, we would like to reiterate na 90% nga talaga ng oppression nangyayari sa labas. In fact, it is even cross-border. In Malaysia, in Sabah, there are still undocumented Moros there. And that's one concern, hindi pa sila makauwi dahil nga yung citizenship nila hindi determined. Hindi determined. These are children of those who migrated to Sabah during the conflict. May mga Iranons of of the province of Maguindanao. There are Tausugs, there are Sama, there are Maranaos, there are Iranons, there are Kulibugan in Sabah, but they are undocumented. They are considered stateless. So and I think we don't know how the national government and how the national government and the state of Malaysia is resolving this. Ang alam namin every now and then maraming pinapabalik na mga halaw, so those who we call halaw. Pinapauwi dito sa Pilipinas, hindi rin tinatanggap dahil undocumented, stateless so sila. But the point here we're stating here, Mr. Chair, is that these are children or children. They were children of those who migrated to Malaysia because of conflict. Sila ho yung mga refugees noon. I think, Mr. Chair, the MP Raisa here actually is the Minister of Social Services and Development. Her ministry deals with these kind of issues, Mr. Chair.
Yes, MP Raisa.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, Mr. Chair, even if we are very happy that there is relative peace now in the Bangsamoro, this does not mean that the human rights violations that occurred systemically and in a very large scale have been resolved. In fact, that is the reason why we are asking for the creation of this commission, because while we are working on the present, we're talking about decades of human rights violations. And as mentioned earlier, we are asking for the national government to create this commission, even while the regional government has some measures that may address some TJ issues. This will not be enough, Mr. Chair. So for example, for human rights violations, we're talking about institutions coming from the state, mainly from the national government. And if you have a commission in the regional government, that will not be able to exercise its powers and exact action from national agencies. So masaya po kami, merong relative peace. The biggest armed group has in the recent years, they have already signed peace agreements with the national government. But still, we have issues of land dispossession brought about by laws that were passed over decades, and which has displaced our people, and which has caused a lot of conflicts that go beyond those past decades. Up to now, we're still experiencing the effects of these national laws. And therefore, Mr. Chair, we are saying that while the regional government has done some concrete actions pertaining to transitional justice, we deem it fit for national government to take this Bangsamoro opportunity, as mentioned by the chair of the TJRC, to look at the root cause of the conflict, hoping and making sure, not just hoping, but making sure that we don't go back to that dark past, no? That we address impunity and that there will be no recurrence of violence in the Bangsamoro, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MP Raisa Jajuri. Another question. Presidential Assistant
With the
Cesar
permission
Yana.
of
You would
Honorable
like to say
Chair,
something?
may I ask Executive Director Bayam to say something, sir?
Okay, Executive Director Bayam, with regards to this issue.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. I'd like to thank the members of the BTA for raising those concerns. In the part of the government for OPAPRO specifically, we acknowledge the statement given by the Deputy Speaker, Omar Sema. I think with the existing mechanisms right now, Your Honor, we would appreciate the members of the Parliament of the BTA if they can elevate to ICCMN, especially those, because those are very crucial and important concerns raised by Deputy Speaker, those undocumented Filipinos still in Sabah right now, lingering and in quandary on what's gonna happen to them, kawawa naman po sila. So with an existing mechanism right now of the ICCMN, pending the passage of these bills right now, pwede naman po natin pag-usapan yan sa ICCMN at magagawan ng makakatulong dito ang national agency, specifically ang DFA. Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Thank you for that. Kasi kawawa rin naman yung mga stateless, no? Napakahirap ng ganon. Yes, Senator De La Rosa.
Yeah, when I went to Malaysia, yan yung problema ng ating embassy doon. Yung problema ng ating mga kababayan doon sa Sabah. Dahil as far as Sabah government is, Malaysian government is concerned, hindi nila mabigyan ng social services itong mga tao na ito because hindi nila itong mga citizens. Hindi, pati lalo-lalo na education. Hindi pwede mag-aaral yung mga bata. Tapos, kung uuwi naman dito, i-declare naman sila ng undocumented. So, kawawa itong mga tao ito kung saan sila pupunta. Sabi nga, stateless. Mabuti lang kung stateless. Ang mas mahirap pa kung magiging hopeless. Ay, alam mo na, saan papunta yung tao pag hopeless na yung tao. So, siguro, hanapan natin ang paraan kung paano natin ma-address yan. Kawawa. Mga Pilipino rin yun by blood. Pilipino yan dahil both parents nila galing dito sa atin, galing sa Mindanao, nag-migrate nung nagkagulo, migrate doon. So, by blood, yung mga bata kahit doon pinanganak sa Sabah, by blood, talagang Pilipino yun. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator De La Rosa. It's valid point kasi kawawa. Tama kayo. Talagang problema yan ng natin, ng embassy doon. Malaysian government cannot give them the benefits kasi hindi state din sila. Tapos sa embassy hindi rin mabigyan ng anumang assistance because again their status. So hopefully that will be given attention, no? While we are in the process of passing this measure. Under the bills, there will be 4 subcommissions to address the specific aspects of transitional justice for the Bangsamoro. Namely, ito po yung subcommissions, Bangsamoro Historical Memory, against impunity and the promotion of accountability and rule of law in the Bangsamoro, and land dispossession, and last, Bangsamoro Healing and Reconciliation. Do this holistically cover the objectives of the transitional justice under the normalization program? Anybody can answer?
Mr. Chair, yes, we believe that the proposed structure of the commission as provided in the 2 bills are going to be responsive to the needs of the Bangsamoro, taking into consideration that these are also part of the recommendations of the TJRC, Mr. Chair, which conducted a lot of consultations and listening processes, as well as consultations with experts and using the dealing with the past paradigm, Mr. Chair, as presented earlier by Madam Moblicker, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MP Raisa. Now we ask OPAPRO or Office of the President, the Intercabinet Cluster Mechanism on Normalization, yung ICCMN, was tasked to work towards the adoption and implementation of the Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Program for the BARM. What are the key accomplishments of the ICCMN with respect to this mandate?
Permission of the chair, may I ask Director Gallardo?
Yes, you may take the seat there, Director Gallardo.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair. One of the major milestones of the ICCMN TGR is the approval of an ICCMN roadmap on transitional justice. This is the government's proposal to the MILF implementing panel, Mr. Chair, insofar as responding to the TGRC report.
So,
in addition, Mr. Chair, the roadmap is composed of the four themes, which was also the recommendation of the TJRC report. There is a pillar on history and history. There's a pillar on justice, a pillar on land, and a pillar on guarantee of non-recurrence. Mr. Chair, are the that's what the healing and reconciliation in the current bills, Mr. Chair.
So what were the recommendations? What recommendations were adopted by ICCMN from the report of the Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Commission? What were, ano po yung mga na-adopt nyo?
Sir, there were a lot of recommendations that were adopted because in the TGRC report, there are two major recommendations. Number one is the establishment of the National Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Commission for the Bangsamoro. And second is the implementation of around 89 programs or interventions to address issues across those four themes, Mr. Chair. So the ICCMN TGR roadmap have adopted several of these interventions, especially those pertaining to certain mandates of the government agencies, Mr. Chair.
So how do we address the challenges? Siguro tanong ko na si Director, what are how do we address the challenges of accountability for past human rights violations and abuses? Or what are the key challenges?
Sir, in the
TJRC?
ICCMN TGR roadmap, which is now currently being reviewed by the GPH MILF Technical Working Group, as this would be the a joint roadmap that will be approved by the panel. One of the programs or the interventions that we adopted under the pillar on history is actually the data collection, Mr. Chair, in terms of the human rights abuses, because we need to start somewhere in terms of ensuring that we'll be able to address. So we need to document also. While there are documentation, we need to have a comprehensive documentation on all these cases, Mr. Chair.
So are we able to involve the victims, survivors in the implementation of the recommendations na involved naman po sila?
Mr. Chair, we have not technically started implementing the roadmap, Mr. Chair, because we are still on the process of getting the consensus at the level of the technical working group. And as mentioned by Idir de Mesa a while ago, we are scheduled to consult with the ICCMN agencies again because this is an update of the one approved in 2021 and the BARM agencies as well, Mr. Chair. And that's where the approval of the panel will come in, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you for that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Senator De La Rosa.
yung issue on land disposition, as mentioned a while ago by our honorable member of parliament, ma'am, yung land disposition that resulted from allegedly from the passage of national laws that allowed it. Can this committee be provided with those laws para mapag-aralan namin, titingnan namin, pag-aralan namin ano yung mga batas na yun?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I think in the TJRC report, there's also mention of these laws. There were a series of laws, particularly during the American period, where the power of the traditional leaders over lands within their territories were voided. Their acts of allowing their subjects or those that they govern were voided, because the theory is that if these lands are not registered, there are no titles to this land, then they are not within the ownership of the native inhabitants. So this is the concept of regalian doctrine po. The same idea that is in the heart of the struggle of the indigenous peoples in general. So with that concept po, that kung wala po kayong titulo, then the land is not yours and the land belongs to the state. So all these native inhabitants, including the Bangsamoro people, were dispossessed of their land. and it became the land, the ownership was recognized as that, as belonging to the state. And with that concept, Mr. Chair, land holdings were provided to other Filipinos at that time. And some of the laws would say that if you are a Christian, you may have this much land holdings, but if you are a non-Christian, you can only have this much. So that's provided in the law po. Batas na po yung nagsasabi. There were a series of laws, and there were resettlement laws that created resettlement, which allowed for or encouraged people from other places to go to Mindanao and resettle there. We're not saying that they should go back. It's just that historically, this is what happened. Those who are considered native inhabitants were dispossessed of the lands, and these land holdings eventually went to those who migrated to Mindanao, thereby not only changing the ownership concept, the framework or the laws pertaining to ownership, but also dispossessing people, and also undermining whatever political structures there were among the native inhabitants, Mr. Chair. So
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In that case, that gripes is not only a monopoly of the people from BARM. It is also that gripe is also pervading kahinda doon sa mga Christian Mindanaoans. Dahil nga, sabi nga ng lulo ko noon, malaki na yung lupa nila noon. Tapos may dumating na taga Luzon na mayaman na alam kung paano magpatitulo hanggat lahat ng pinatutuluhan doon. Wala yan sa isip ng mga lulo namin noon magpapatitulo eh. So yun, we have the same gripes actually. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Salamat. Salamat, Mr. Chair.
Director Khalil.
Yes, Director Khalil Bayan po from DNR. Opo.
Very important. Sige po.
Yeah. Actually, Mr. Chair, I agree po dun sa statement ni isang makalikasang araw po nga pala sa ating lahat. I agree po dun sa statement ni MP that all untitled lands, especially yung mga alienable and disposable na untitled, belongs to the state. Opo. However, meron pong pagkakataon yung mga kababayan natin, regardless kung Moro man or ano, so long na may prove na matagal na po silang nakatira doon sa area, and then on the part of the DNR, we allow them to be yung disposition po, binibigay po namin sa kanila, so long na qualified po sila, and then alienable and disposable po sila. Kasi po, basically, ang management po ng lupain ng Pilipinas ay nasa mandato po ng Departamento ng DNR. So sa ngayon po, in the case of BARM, considering na autonomous government na yung BARM, may counterpart po kami na tinatawag na Ministry of Environment, Natural Resources and Energy. Sila po yung counterpart ng DNR sa BARM. So just to inform the committee, meron po kaming pinirmahan na Memorandum of Understanding ang aming kalihim, si Secretary Maria Antona Yulo Loizaga, with the Minister of the Environment ng BARM, si Minister Ahmad Brahim, to assist them in terms of technical assistance po, Mr. Chair, and other related matters po in protecting and conserving our environment. And then just recently, Mr. Chair, nag-consult din po yung Land Management Bureau namin, and doon po sa management po ng mga lupa na belongs to the state within BARM jurisdiction. So our legal department or legal service in the central office commented po na na-devolve na po sa MENRE yung mga land management ng
ng kalupain po ng estado. So yung MENRE na po yung magmamanage in terms of leasing ito, no? Kasi po hangga't hindi pa po natitituluhan yan, pwede pong mag-lease po yung occupant. Opo, yung in terms of disposition, etc., yung leasing po na lupa, kung napapakinabangan naman po, pwede pong i-lease. So ang management po ngayon is na-devolve na po sa sa MENRE po, based on the organic law po ng Bangsamoro. So with that, Mr. Chair, I think the lawyer from LMB or Bureau can add also.
Attorney Carlon Pambid, actually itong tanong po ni Senator De La Rosa is very significant, no? Lalo yung part to address yung disposition. It will be good to know kung ano ginagawa ng DNR tsaka yung Land Management Bureau about this. Sige, Attorney Pambid.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. So just to add dun sa since ang sinasabi ni Director is na-devolve na nga. So since ang napansin namin dito sa proposed bill is data gathering dun sa land dispossession, what we are proposing that we could maybe share the public land application geospatial information database based dun sa mga previous na disposition na nung nasa amin pa yung disposition for their data gathering. So yun lang siguro yung pinapropose namin dun sa provision on the database gathering. So for the public land application, kasi dun sa part naman ng DNR as said by our director, syempre yung mga dinispose namin based on qualified occupants. So pwede namin siguro i-provide yung mga database na yun for the gathering para ma-address yung sa restitution ng mga lupa. Kung meron man.
Yes, Speaker Sep.
Mr. Chair, we fully recognize the shared powers between the DNR and the MENRE dun sa competence nila sa region and of course at the national level. What we are practically raising here, Mr. Chair, the majority of the issue on land dispossession occurs outside of the core territory of the Bangsamoro. If you go back to records, Mr. Chair, in the 1970s when people were being displaced, another group of people will enter their property and they become owners because they would practically claim that they are the sole owners and they've been there in possession when practically may mga tao lang ho na na-displace na umalis dun sa lugar dahil may conflict. Nung pagbalik na ho nila sa lupa nila, sir, meron na hong nakatira na iba, may titulo na. And that is one cause of problem, Mr. Chair. Because there are cases like this in North Cotabato, particularly in the Pikit area, in Kabakan area, and in Carmen area. There are cases like this. Bangsamoro people, Maguindanon people, and Iranon people have been displaced because of the conflict. Pagbalik ho nila dun sa lupa nila, wala na, titulado na ho ng ibang tao yung lupa nila. And we are not even referring here to religious groups. We're referring this parehas na tao, sir, na nangangailangan ng resources. And the only unfortunate issue there is may na-displace lang, pagka-displace, inagawan, and this continues to occur, Mr. Chair. Particularly in North Cotabato, in South Cotabato, and in the Sarangani areas. And even in Zamboanga areas, marami pa rin ho nangyayari na ganito. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I agree with the findings of Member of Parliament Sema. Marami yan kaso doon. Kahit sino-sino narinig natin, di ba? Ma-Musliman, ma-Christian, yung mga IP doon, talagang andyan yung problema na yan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator De La Rosa. Now we go to DOJ. Representative ng DOJ. Attorney Normina.
Yes, sir.
Question lang, what is the treatment of the DOJ of the criminal cases related to the Bangsamoro conflict how can the agency contribute to the transitional justice in dealing with cases related to the region and the Bangsamoro people? Yung treatment lang of the criminal cases.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and my colleagues in the government service from the Bangsamoro government and the national government. Sir, as far as I'm concerned, the Department of Justice is limited to what is provided or limited in terms of accepting cases. Because as far as the Department of Justice is concerned, by the way, I'm sorry for that. As far as the jurisdiction of the Department of Justice is concerned, we are confined to what is provided in the administrative code. So basically, we entertain all criminal cases, and this pertains to the National Prosecution Service. I think in the previous House bill from the House, we opine or we submitted a position regarding the creation of the National Commission for the Transitional Justice and Reconciliation. We fully support the initiative, but however, we have reservations with respect to the investigative, prosecutorial, and land titling because this may affect the jurisdiction of 3 attached agencies of the department, namely the National Bureau of Investigation and the National Prosecution Service, as well as the Land Registration Authority. But in terms of criminal cases pertaining to those who belongs to the Bangsamoro, we basically accept all cases, sir. We don't have any reservation with respect to accepting cases based on ano.
So there are siguro kayo pong State Council,
Yes, sir.
legal
Yes, sir.
staff. Has the DOJ conducted a mapping inventory of criminal cases related to Bangsamoro people?
As of now, sir, no, I am not aware of that, sir. Basically, what we do know is that we have a counterpart, the Bangsamoro Attorney General's Office, the BAGO, and they have jurisdiction over these cases now. But so as far as the DOJ is concerned, in terms of data gathering with respect to accused or any cases involving members of the Bangsamoro or a Muslim for that matter, we are not really basing our records based on the religious aspects or their concern.
Siguro last na lang po, yung what are our international obligation in terms of violation of international human rights law and international humanitarian law?
As far, sir, the Department of Justice is very much involved in the critiquing, the legislative critiquing of the internally displaced bill, internally displaced persons bill. So basically, we are really inclined towards, and we have an office in the Department of Justice, basically task with respect to refugees and statelessness and internally displaced persons. And we are committed with the UNHCR, the High Commission on internally displaced persons. So basically, yun lang po yung parang transitional justice. And also, we are part of the ICCMN, and we participate in the planning and the development of the roadmap as well, because I became part of the cluster on non-recurrence, where we also in the land titling and also involved in the several meetings conducted by the OPAPRU regarding the land titling and internally displaced people, sir.
Okay, thank you for that, Attorney Normina Jul Tadifa. Now we move on to DND, AFP, PNP, and DILG. Common questions lang, no? With respect to the efforts of disbanding private armed groups in the Bangsamoro region, may we get a report from the agencies of these efforts progress? Again, just a bit to the committee, no? With regards siguro DILG, also PNP and DND, AFP, with regards to the efforts of disbanding private armed groups in the Bangsamoro. Probably siguro, you can siguro in a nutshell kung ano po ang efforts natin. Siguro ASEC Henry Robinson of the ND.
Good morning, Your Honor, Mr. Chair, Senator Ejercito. At the outset, I would like to manifest that the DND's part and involvement in the Senate bill being discussed, which lays the legal framework for the Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Program for the Bangsamoro, as well as the National Justice and Reconciliation Commission, is in the aspect of security of the normalization process. We in the AFP is the implementing and working closely in coordination with the Office of Presidential Advisor for Peace, Reconciliation, and Unity, or OPAPRU. The DND also takes the same position with the OPAPRU, sir. And for the implementation of the security aspect, I will give the floor to the AAP representative, Captain Dimaporo, for the update, sir.
Yes, sa aking update us, Captain Dimaporo.
Thank you so much, sir. Mr. Chair, thank you so much. Before anything else, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Captain Dimaporo, Philippine Navy MLC, the Chief of the APP's Development Office, Bangsamoro. And I am the personal staff of General Romeo S. Bronner, Philippine Army, the Chief of Staff Armed Forces of the Philippines. And before anything else, I'd like to convey the position of the Armed Forces of the Philippines that we support the initiative of the Senate in pushing for the passing of the bill on the National Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Commission, establishing a Transitional Justice Reconciliation Program for the Bangsamoro people. As far as the security sector, particularly the Armed Forces of the Philippines, we are focused in complying with the security components of the transitional normalization component on security, and we provide support, particularly on the different mechanisms, particularly in the Joint Normalization Committee, the independent decommissioning body, the Joint Peace and Security Teams, the Task Force for Decommissioning of, and particularly your question on the National Task Force on disbandment of private armed groups. As for the latest report that we received, there are no active private armed groups in the area of Western Mindanao as well as Eastern Mindanao, but there are potential private armed groups as for the latest report, sir. Thank you so much.
PNP, siguro, General Placer, any update yun to, with respect to the efforts of disbanding private armed groups in the region?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, Your Honors, sa inyong lahat, magandang umaga po ulit. We would like to manifest also that the PNP, in response to the deliverables of the Transitional Justice and Reconciliation aspect of the normalization under the normalization program for the Bangsamoro region, we have already organized, sir, the technical working group on transitional justice and reconciliation way back October 2019. We continue to complete our deliverables. Part po, significant po dyan, sir, yung incorporation of the Bangsamoro history and culture doon sa aming graduates ng sa aming cadets ng Philippine National Police Academy, yung aming mga patrol men na recruits, and yung in-service trainings po natin so that they will understand when they will be assigned there sa kultura ng Bangsamoro region, sir. As to the efforts doon sa National Task Force for the disbandment of private armed groups, which is under the security aspect ng normalization program pa rin, sir. Dagdagan ko lang po yung sinabi ni Captain Dimaporo. He's my counterpart, sir. Actually, I'm from from the PNP Peace Process and Development Center. Counterpart po kami dalawa. There is a National Task Force for the disbandment of private armed groups composed of task forces Eastern Mindanao and Western Mindanao. As sinabi niya po na there are potential private armed groups that can be maybe utilized in the coming elections. However, sir, the task forces, yung dalawang APCs, Eastern Mindanao namin at saka Western Mindanao, are doing law enforcement efforts supported by the armed forces to address the concerns, sir.
Senator De Rosa.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, very important yan, ha? Potential. Abang potential pa lang sila, unahan na ninyo. Huwag ninyo hintayin pang maging full-blown na armed group sila. Alam na what to do. Dapat meron na kayong mga preemptive measures para sigurado tayo ngayon 2025, peaceful talaga tayo pagdating ng 2025 elections.
Yes, sir.
Asek Benitez, meron ba ang DLG o yun sa PNP na rin ang ano nyo? yung with regards to the private armed group.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Chair. Now, insofar as the updates or the data on the disbandment of these private armed groups, then we will differ. The DILG basically differs to the more empirical data of the PNP. But with your permission, Mr. Chair, and of course the good Senator Bato de la Rosa, just would like to elicit some few points. Now, vis-a-vis the stand of the department.
Yes, that's very important.
Well, basically,
Go ahead.
the department through its head secretary, Benhar Abalos, now supports now this measure on transitional justice for reconciliation and commissioning or for commission in the Bangsamoro area. Now, we believe we stand on all fours with your commitment that we should rectify the errors of history, now possibly redress institutional human rights violation and other forms of discrimination, including legitimate grievances emanating from the Bangsamoro people. Likewise, naniniwala po kami na ang transitional justice is a very effective mechanism for addressing the concerns of the Bangsamoro people, particularly the deprived ones. But, Mr. Chair, now, this humble representation believes that for a very effective implementation of this proposed measure, we believe that there must be a proper synchronization or harmonization between the national laws, now particularly the Constitution, and the laws that are being formulated or cascaded or being produced in the Bangsamoro region. And on this particular perspective, and with all due respect and humility, now the national government and the department believe that laws to be crafted by the Bangsamoro region should find harmony with the national law. Now, just allow me to present one particular issue vis-a-vis the stand of the department. Now, recently we have come across the Bangsamoro Local Government Code, and there is a particular provision there that pertains to the exercise of general supervision now on the part of the Bangsamoro region. Now, the national government believes that this power should belong only to the president as basically a spouse under the fundamental law. And yet, there is a colatilia or a provision in the Bangsamoro Local Government Code that this could be exercised by another official. Although we do not want to preempt any possible ruling of the courts, Mr. Chair, and of course the good senator. Now, we see that this is a potential problem later on. And for the transitional justice reconciliation to become successful as envisioned by the authors, now we believe that there should be a proper harmonization between the local laws and the national law, if only for us to be able to advance and to move forward. Yun na po, Mr. Chair. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Asek Romeo Benitez. Yes, Member of Parliament, Jose Lorena.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While we recognize that position, the Bangsamoro Parliament passed the law based on Republic Act 11054. Under Article 7 of that law, the BARM is still under the general supervision of the President. It is very clear. But it should also be recognized that under that autonomy law, the Bangsamoro is authorized, is required, mandated to come out with its local government code. Because the system of governance we have, as provided for under 11054, is different from the system of governance in the national. We have a parliamentary system. And therefore, the idea of an autonomy is to tailor its legislation to its accepted culture as provided for in the preamble of Republic Act 11054. While we admit that we should be working, there is what we call the Bangsamoro Parliament, Philippine Congress of the Philippines Forum, where the discussion on these issues could be done. And I hope the court can come out with a decision on that matter, because that particular provision was challenged on the supervision. In fact, the supervision of the president of the BARM is different to the kind of supervision that he has over local government. Because in the BARM, it is to implement national and regional laws. So there should be a clearer understanding of that provision, because that is why we would like to wait for the decision of the Supreme Court on that matter, rather than to be hasty on coming out with some opinion which may contravene what the law 11054 has provided for us and passed by Congress and the Senate of the Philippines for the Bangsamoro. Thank you, just for the record.
Thank you, Member of Parliament Jose Lorena. Siguro tanong din natin sa AFP-NP pa rin. Decommissioning is an integral part of normalization At present, I'd just like to know, at present, how many MILF, BIFF combatants were decommissioned? Anybody from the AFP can answer? DND, o siguro sino bang sasagot? CPA, ano na, Cesariano.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would like to respond to that. On the number of combatants decommissioned, we now have 26,132 individuals out of the planned 40,000. And on the weapons, Mr. Chair, we now have 4,625 weapons out of the 7,000.
So, on schedule naman po yun?
Yeah, actually, Mr. Chair, there are 4 phases in the decommissioning, and we have completed the 3 phases already, and we are to implement the phase 4, which is the last phase of the decommissioning. Thank you.
Thank you. And also, are there any programs? What programs are being implemented for the transformation to those who will, for them to be productive members of society? Ito mga fighters, no, who used to anong pong mga programa for their transformation?
Actually, Mr. Chair, there are 4 aspects in the transformation. One is the social services, and meaning the social services portion, we are addressing on the identities of these individuals, giving them documents on their identity, and we also have we are also covering them on the health insurance of these individuals, the commissioned combatants, and I mentioned earlier the civil registration of these individuals. And we also attend to their livelihood requirements, Mr. Chair. And also we are capacitating them, and this pertains to giving them education, educational assistance. And the last portion actually, Mr. Chair, is in the socio-economic. So that is the most important. And recently, both panels from the MILF and the government have agreed on the framework and on the standard package of the socio-economic interventions for the decommissioned combatants. So we're happy to inform the body that both panels have agreed on the socio-economic packages to be given to these decommissioned combatants, and we are now in the implementation of these packages, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, PA Cesariano. Next, we move sa DBM. Attorney Tricia Baraan is always here in the Senate. In terms of financing the development in the Bangsamoro region, how is this reflected in the annual spending of the government? How much did we allocate for the region for 2024?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. For the BARM po, for 2024, we have 149 billion. And then we also have the normalization program po under OPAPRU. Over the years from 2015 to 2024, may 7.8 billion na rin po for that. Thank you po, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure that these are funded so that the goals will be realized in the implementation phase. Anyway, those are the important questions that we have already asked and issues. I'd just like to ask your position papers, respective position papers that we submitted to the committee. Tapos yung po sa civil service, yung position nyo rin po. And also LRA, kanina medyo na-address naman yung natanong naman sa disposition and other issue on land. Can you just submit to this committee? Attorney Rizalde is here.
Yes, sir.
Sige
Yes,
po.
Your Honor, we will submit our position paper. However, I'd like to just say that I think we emailed an advanced copy already yesterday.
Okay, thank you for that. No? Thank you. Thank you. Tapos sa NCIP, no? Kanina naan natin, pati yung respective position papers. Okay. So,
Mr. Chair.
yes, Attorney Molina.
Mauna na po doon.
Sige, Attorney Kaliba.
Mr. Chair, we would also want to manifest that on the issue of statelessness, the Commission on Human Rights is working with its counterpart in Malaysia in the Suhakam. So as we speak right now, Commissioner Faye Dumarpa and the head of the Center for Crisis and Humanitarian Protection are there attending a World Summit on statelessness, and one of the issues is the Sabah conflict. Is the Sabah statelessness of Philippines there?
Thank you, Attorney Erwin Kaliba of CHR. Kasi kawawa. That's very difficult to be stateless. Ang hirap nun. Malaysian government, Philippine government, we cannot extend assistance, no? Or anything. So I hope that will be given priority. Yes,
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Sema.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Also, the Bangsamoro Parliament is there is a pending resolution there to organize our own committee on the Halaw, and we will send a team to Malaysia to investigate and look into the issue of this Halaw. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next, Attorney Christian Molina
Mr.
of
Chair.
Civil Service.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, good morning, good noon, Senator JV, as well as the fellow resource speakers and public servants. On behalf of the Civil Service Commission, in general, the Commission yields to the wisdom and sound discretion of the legislature in determining the need for the adoption of the proposed legislative measure. Nonetheless, Mr. Chair, we request permission to submit a comment or position paper on a later date. By way of initial comment, Mr. Chair, may we suggest that Section 9 in both bills should expressly indicate that aside from the approval of the organizational structure and staffing pattern by the DBM, the qualification standards of positions included therein shall be subject to the approval of the Civil Service Commission. That's all, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Molina of Civil Service. We also will wait for your position papers. So with that, the committee chair would like to thank everyone, especially our esteemed resource persons, for actively participating in our discussions today. If there are no more matters to be taken up, the chair hereby adjourns this committee hearing. Maraming salamat po.
Recording stopped.